Heaven Official's Blessing. Chapter 35. Audio source: WuXiaWorldAudiobook.com. Enter the Ghost City. Rendezvous with the Ghost King. Much ashamed, it wasn't until 4 hours later that Xie Lian had the time to sneak a peek at his scroll and finally learned the backstory of this Wind Master. The 5 elemental masters of the heavens used their titles to replace their surnames. For example, before the Earth Master ascended, his mortal name was called Mingyi. After ascension, he was to be addressed as the Earth Master Yi. As for the Wind Master, his old name was Shi Qingshan, and after ascension he was called the Wind Master Qingshan. Much fitting for his title, his personality was like the wind. He was sociable and generous, mindless of petty details, and very popular in the heavens, as apparent from him easily handing out 10,000 merits in the spirit communication array. But at the end of the day, as his older brother was the god that controlled mortal wealth, of course the Wind Master was generous and mindless of petty details. Indeed, the older brother of Wind Master Qingshan was the one called the Tyrannical Water, the Water Master Wudu. Descending to the underworld together, the two gods walked side by side, chatting as they traveled. Xie Lian had his arms crossed and commented in amazement. The Pei family producing 2 ascended generals under one name was already a legend, but you and your brother, one wind, one water, ascending at the same time, is truly a tale of wonder. It must be known that even in a million there may not be that one who had the ability to ascend. Pei Ming and Pei Su were separated by a few hundred years, and Pei Su wasn't even the direct descendant. He was from Pei Ming's brother's branch of the family that was who knows how many times removed through the generations. The Water Master Wudu and the Wind Master Qingshan were real blood-related brothers, a real pair of ascended officials from the same house, thus truly incredible. Shi Qingshan laughed it off. It's nothing. My brother and I were born from the same mother, grew up together, went to school together, cultivated together, so naturally we'd ascend together. Xie Lian also learned about this when he was cramming from the scroll earlier. Shi Wudu ascended first, but after only a few years, his brother Shi Qingshan also successfully passed a heavenly calamity. Mortals often worship the 2 heavenly officials together in the same temple and praised them as equals. It was obvious the 2 brothers enjoyed a good relationship. As San Lang and Nanfeng had mentioned, the Water Master must be the reason Pei Ming wouldn't touch the Wind Master. After all, the brother of the Tyrannical Water was not one to be picked on easily. Coming to this point, Xie Lian thought of another detail and considered it before asking. Lord Wind Master, at the Great Martial Hall earlier, the way General Pei spoke it sounded as if he shared a friendship with your brother. Wouldn't your filing the complaint against little General Pei affect? No, Shi Qingshan replied. My brother already knows I can't stand Pei Ming. Knowing is one thing, action is another, Xie Lian said. Wouldn't all of this cause a rift between the Water Master and General Pei? If that caused a rift, even better. I wish my brother would stop hanging out with him, and leave the 3 Cancers moniker behind one day, Shi Qingshan said. Xie Lian stopped. What 3 Cancers? Single quote. Shi Qingshan said astonished. What? You don't know about this either? Fine, whatever. I now know you're not up to date with anything. You can just listen for giggles. The 3 Cancers is the nickname given to the 3 heavenly officials who don't have a good rep but have a good relationship with each other, and they are Ming Guang, Ling Wen, and my brother. I can't believe it's not Xie Lian, and Xie Lian. Xie Lian thought. Shi Qingshan fanned his Wind Master fan and continued. Even if I can't stand him, the whole business this time around was started by little General Pei himself. There's no way I'd let Pei Ming pin this on the head priestess of Ban Yu and protect little General Pei. It doesn't matter if you're mortal, or a god, or a demon, you have to be responsible for your own actions. Bullying a little girl is low. The last line was uttered in contempt, and Xie Lian smiled. The Wind Master is a defender of justice. Shi Qingshan laughed. You're not bad yourself. I've heard rumors about the Banyu Pass here and there, but never had the time to investigate. Plus, my brother would yell at me about it. With so much on my plate, I'd forgotten. When I heard you inquire about it in the Spirit Communication Array the other day, it reminded me there was such a case, and so I went to check it out. Turns out not only did you ask, you'd even gone yourself. So I thought, dang, what a guy. This Wind Master certainly had an extremely straightforward and interesting personality, and Xie Lian could understand why he was so popular in the heavens. He hadn't thought that after ascension that he'd be able to form a friendship with a heavenly official like this, and couldn't help but smile happily. But just as he turned his head to face him, the white-clad cultivator beside him was transformed to a lady in white. It was so sudden, Xie Lian almost tripped in his step. Lord Windmaster, why the sudden transformation? Oh, truth to be told, I'm actually more powerful in this form. Shi Qingshan replied. As aforementioned, the Wind Master and the Water Master were often worshipped together. However, this also produced a bizarre accident. Perhaps people thought that worshipping two male gods together in one temple was weird. Lords and ladies go hand in hand, handsome and beautiful make a pair, that should be the way. Thus, after a while someone somewhere sculpted the Wind Master as a goddess. Never mind the goddess statue, they had to make up stories to go with it too, something like the wind and water gods used to be brothers and sisters. There's even a version where they were husband and wife. After a few hundred years, the story spread and from them came even more outlandish legends. Once in a while the two officials would read through the tales out of curiosity, but each time they would cringe and fill an entire coop with goosebumps. Nonetheless, there were more than many who believed in those outrageous stories, and the Wind Master's gender started getting mixed up. "My lady, prithee watch over me," could be heard all over the place. Thus, Shi Qingshan gained the nickname, Lady Wind Master. Although silly, it was actually not that rare of an occurrence. Ling Wen, for example, also had a similar experience. Ling Wen was a lady official, but she didn't dress colorfully and fashionably like the other lady deities. She was often in black, serious and competent, and spent her days madly working through piles and piles of administrative scrolls in her palace. Although her personality was partly to blame, but much of it was due to another reason. If one should ask any mortal, is Ling Wen a man or a woman? Anyone would respond with confidence, a man. A literature god was of course a male. Only for this, when Ling Wen ascended she suffered disadvantages. She was a literature goddess, but many in the mortal realm thought, how could women be in that position? How could ladies possibly ensure good fortune in literary competence? It must not be effective. Thus, although she worked hard, she still had very few devotees. Later, some of the devotees couldn't get over it, and rebuilt her statues into male gods, transforming her from the goddess Ling Wen to the god Ling Wen, and even made up an entire set of extravagant backstory. After this change, her temples became prosperous and everyone praised how effective the god Ling Wen was. But the truth was, an official was an official, spiritual powers were all the same, and the legends were all fake. Still, the people ate them up. Since then, when Ling Wen needed to appear in dreams, she could only do so in the male form. By the same logic, people believed that it was more appropriate to worship a man and a woman as a pair in the wind and water temples. Who cared if you were a god or a demon? You must appear as people believed. Appearances could be different by a million miles and people would still see what they wanted to see. The upper court heavenly officials no longer cared for this kind of thing. As for Shi Qingshan himself, by Xie Lian's own observations, didn't appear to mind at all. In fact, he's completely immersed and enjoying himself, and was even passionately dragging others into it, making Xie Lian wonder about the real identity of the lady in black that was with the Wind Master the last time. In the 4 hours that they had spent traveling to the underworld together, Shi Qingshan had been tirelessly trying to persuade Xie Lian into disguising himself as a woman, with very convincing reasons like, women have stronger auras of yin, one therefore much easier to hide in the Ghost City crowds. Xie Lian thought about it and rejected the idea. I don't have enough powers to transform. I'll lend you my powers. Shi Qingshan replied excitedly. That's the whole reason why the Heavenly Emperor appointed me to this mission. No, my lord, please save your powers for when we're actually fighting the enemy. Shi Qingshan couldn't persuade Xie Lian, and stopped pushing. At this time, the two had reached a wild field in the middle of nowhere. The night had deepened, and crows cried crazedly in the darkness, creating a creepy atmosphere. Xie Lian looked around and said, it must be here. There are many evil auras in the air and a large graveyard nearby. We'll for sure catch one or two going to the market. We'll follow when the time comes. Thus, the two squatted on top of a burial mound and waited. A moment later, Shi Qingshan put one hand into a sleeve to rummage, and dug out a small jug of booze. You want some? Xie Lian reached for the jug and took a small sip, feeling his throat burn, and gave the jug back. Thanks. Shi Qingshan took the jug and gulped a couple swallows himself. You can't drink. I can, Xie Lian replied. But drinking causes insanity, so just a taste is enough. What time is it? Shi Qingshan hummed, and replied. It's midnight. Must be soon then, Xie Lian said. Just as he finished his sentence, a faint row of light appeared deep in the woods afar. That faint row of light slowly came closer and closer, until finally the two could see it was a group of expressionless women dressed in white, walking in a line. Some are old, some are young, some beautiful, some ugly, each wearing the funeral garb, a white lantern in hand, walking in an easy pace. They must be the female ghosts heading to the markets in the deep night. Let's follow, Xie Lian said under his breath. Shi Qingshan nodded, took a last swig from the jug and threw it aside. The two stood up and casually trailed behind the group of ghosts. The two had already prepared beforehand and erased all their spiritual aura. When they walked, they were like people-shaped logs without a scent of life. The band of female ghosts before them held their white lanterns and followed an unknown path in the darkened woods, strolled while chatting in high-pitched, delicate voices. I'm so glad the ghost market's opened again. I need a facial. One said. What happened to your face? Didn't you just recently get a facial? Another replied. The first one responded. It rotted again. Sigh. The one who serviced me last time said it was guaranteed fresh for a year. It hasn't even been half a year. Xie Lian and Shi Qingshan trailed behind them, listening to their chatter, and didn't speak a word. When they heard something funny, they'd only lift their lips and eye each other. After about an hour, the group came to a valley. Red light emitted from deep within the valley, and wafting in the ethereal night seemed to be music. Xie Lian grew more and more curious to finally see for himself what the ghost city looked like. As they were entering the valley, however, the last one in the line of ghosts suddenly turned her head and discovered them. Confused, she asked, Who are you two? The question made all the pale-faced heads turn, and the women surrounded them, curious. When did they start following us? Those two weren't part of the group when we left the burial grounds. Which burial ground did you come from? How come we've never seen your faces before? Xie Lian cleared his throat. We came from a burial ground much further away, so of course you've never seen us. Shi Qingshan smiled too. That's right. We came from thousands of miles especially for the ghost market. The group of white-clad female ghosts were silent, and expressionlessly stared at them. If it was anyone else, they'd probably fall to the ground shivering in fright. Xie Lian wasn't afraid of having their identities exposed. These weak, feral ghosts had no power over them. However, since the ghost city was right before their eyes, it wouldn't be wise to start anything in such close distance to the target lest they alert their enemy. Just then, one of the women staring at Shi Qingshan slowly moved her lips. Mei Mei, too, your face is very nicely maintained, she said. Xie Lian and Shi Qingchen stopped. Immediately, the two of them nodded a few times. Xie Lian replied, "It's all right, not bad." And Shi Qingchen copied his tone and said, "Pretty good, right?" All the female ghosts then approached and started a discussion. "Yes, not rotten at all. Mei Mei, where did you get your facials done? Do you have any tricks? Can you recommend a place?" Shi Qingchen didn't know how to respond, and only laughed awkwardly to delay answering. Just then, the group turned around, and a sudden crimson brightness flashed into their eyes. A mysterious and haunted world opened before them. A long street appeared. It was so long there was no end in sight. Along the street were all manners of bustling stores and stalls. Colorful signs were flown high above and giant red lanterns were hung low. Pedestrians filled the street, many wearing masks of faces, crying, laughing, angry. Some human, some not human. Those without masks could only be described as bizarre. Some have large heads and small bodies, some skinny as a bamboo stick, some flat like a pancake pressing on the ground, letting pedestrians walk all over them while complained. Xie Lian was careful not to step on anything weird. When he passed by a food stall, he saw the stall owner use a giant bone to stir a giant pot of soup. And while it stirred, spit would spill from between its teeth, dripping into the soup, and in that soup filled with weird colors floated many an eyeball. Xie Lian watched and suddenly gained confidence. On the other side, there were strange buskers performing. A buff burly man had a small ghost, weak as a chick, in his hold, and the man opened his mouth to blow massive flames to barbecue the small ghost while it squealed like a dying pig, writhing. The crowd cheered and shrieked, shouting, "Encore!" There were even insane individuals randomly throwing money into the air, and when one slip of it flew before Xie Lian, he grabbed one and flipped it over. It was money of the dead, as he thought. As he walked, there was a butcher stall with a row of crestfallen human heads, which were hung in order of age, as indicated on their price tags. A child's head was this much, the youth's meat was that much, a grown man's flesh costed this amount, a mature woman's sinews was charged that much, etc. The one dressed in an apron with a butcher knife in hand was a boar with black, thick hair. And under its knife getting butchered was a muscular human leg, still twitching. This was truly a swarm of evil, the chaos of hell. Humans butchering pigs was a common sight, but pigs butchering humans wasn't, so Xie Lian couldn't help but take a few extra peeks. The boar noticed him watch and immediately reacted. "What are you looking at? You buyin'?" Xie Lian shook his head. "No." The boar butcher continued to chop onto the cutting board violently, blood spraying all over. He yelled, voice rough, "If you ain't buyin', then don't watch. Fucking tryin' to start something. Get out of here." Xie Lian got out of there. But just as his steps quickened, he suddenly realized something very wrong. That group of female ghosts and Shi Qingchen had disappeared. In shock, Xie Lian wanted to connect with the Wind Master at once within the spirit communication array, afraid that he really got dragged away by those ghosts to do facials. However, this was the Ghost City, and the spells used by the Heaven were heavily restricted. The connection to the array didn't work, so he had to wander the streets to search for the missing Wind Master. As he walked, someone suddenly grabbed him. Already alert and tense, Xie Lian instantly reacted. "Who is it?" The one who stopped him was a woman, and was surprised by Xie Lian's reaction. But after seeing his face clearly, she started giggling, playing coy. "Hey there, little GE. You're looking mighty fine." This woman was in an exceedingly revealing dress, her makeup terrifyingly heavy, the white foundation uneven, and when she opened her mouth clumps of it would fall off her face. Her bosoms were stuffed as if something was filled in her flesh. Truly, a shocking sight. Xie Lian gently pushed away her thin claw-like fingers and said, "My lady, there's no need to speak like this." The woman was taken aback, and burst out laughing. "Dear Lord, my lady, Who the hell still calls me a lady in this day and age? Ha! All the passers-by seemed to think it was funny too, and started laughing along. Xie Lian shook his head, but before he could speak the woman pounced on him. Don't go, little Ge, I like you. Come and have fun with me all night, I won't ask for payment. She pouted and winked. But I will charge. Xie Lian sighed and prayed inwardly, and gently but firmly pushed her away. He said kindly, my lady, please. The woman seemed annoyed now and screeched. Stop calling me lady, no one cares for it. Quit wasting my time, ya comin' or not? To tempt Xie Lian further, the woman suddenly unlaced her already revealing shirt. Xie Lian wasn't prepared to face such a bold move and sighed again before turning away and continued on his way. The female ghost chased after him and continued her seduction. Do you like what you see? Little did she realize, Xie Lian had grown up in the Holy Royal Pavilion, practicing abstinence for most of his mortal life, and his body and mind had always been as steady as the mountains. It didn't matter what he saw, his heart was like still water. Anything unseemly would have him automatically chant sutras in his mind, calming his spirit. Unsuccessful in her temptation, the female ghost's expression changed, and she started yelling. You don't want any of this? Are ya even a man? Xie Lian continued to move his sight away from her and replied, I am. Then prove it, the female ghost yelled. From the sidelines, a passerby mocked. You slut. He thinks her old and ugly, and want none o' you. What are ya doing so clingy? Hearing those words, Xie Lian deadpanned with a straight face. It's not that. It's because I have a problem. I can't get erect. Everyone fell silent. Then within an instant all roared with laughter. Ha! This time, Xie Lian became the victim of ridicule. No one had ever met a man who was brave enough to announce to the world that they have such a problem. However, to someone like Xie Lian, it didn't matter whether if his private member was functional or not, so he already developed the habit of using that as an excuse to get out of these kinds of situations. And it was a method that worked every single time. Sure enough, the female ghost redid her shirt and stopped clinging onto him. No wonder you're like this. What a pig. If ya have a problem, why didn't you say so sooner? PFFT. Not far behind them, the boar butcher threw down his knife again and yelled, Fucking slut. What's that you say? What's wrong with pigs? The female ghost wasn't scared, and yelled right back. What about pigs? Fucking animals. Soon the long street was filled with shouting and squawking, people hollering. That female ghost Lan Chong is startin' shit again. Butcher Zoo is chopping ghosts. The two sides buzzed back and forth, rowdy and chaotic, and in the midst of that pandemonium, Xie Lian escaped. After walking for a bit, he looked back over to where the crowd was inside. Xie Lian continued walking and soon came upon another rowdy crowd and he stopped in front of a gigantic red building. This building was extraordinarily grandiose and imposing. Its columns, roofs, walls, everything was in magnificent bright red, and the floors were covered in thick, exquisite carpet. If must be compared, this building was on par with the heavenly palaces. The only difference was it's more bedazzling than dignified. Large crowds went in and out of the door, and within, it was quite lively, filled with loud, excited voices. At a closer look, Xie Lian found that this place was a gambler's den. Xie Lian walked up to the door, and on two columns at the entrance had a set of verses. 3. The left said, Money over life, and the right said, Gains over shame. On the top horizontal column it said, Ha! It was ugly and rough, not worthy of being entrance verses. The calligraphy was also wild, clumsy, and frenzied. A disgrace to call it calligraphy at all. It was as if someone took a brush while drunk, and scribbled with malicious intent, and the words got blown by a blast of evil aura before they were formed thus. Xie Lian was once heir to the throne, and his calligraphy was taught by the best teachers in the land. The characters he saw before him now were a real tragedy. In fact, the characters were so hellish that Xie Lian was starting to think they're kind of funny, and shook his head. The Wind Master wouldn't be playing around here. He'd have a better chance searching in beauty parlors for female ghosts. He was going to move on from the gambler's den, but something made him reconsider, and after only a few steps, he turned around and entered the red building. In the main hall of the gambler's den, crowds were filled to the brim. Numerous heads moving, laughter and desperate cries crammed the air. Xie Lian descended a few steps when he suddenly heard screaming, and when he looked to where it came from, 4 masked bouncers were walking over carrying another. That man was in pain, writhing and howling while being carried, and a trail of blood followed. Turns out, both of his legs were cleanly cut off from the knees, and blood was pouring from the stumps. A small ghost followed closely, and greedily licked up all the blood on the floor as they went. It was a terrifying sight, yet no one in the gambler's den spared it any looks, and continued to shout and cheer, rolling about. Though, of course, many who gamble here weren't people, and if they were, then they're no ordinary humans. Xie Lian slighted his body to let past the 4 bouncers carrying the man, and then continued going deeper into the den. A petite attendant, in a laughing mask, approached him and welcomed him. "Sir, are you here to play?" Xie Lian gave a small smile. "I don't have money on me. Mind if I just look?" In his experience, usually if you say those words in any establishment you'd get booted. Why would you enter without money? Yet the petite attendant still giggled. "No, money is not a problem. Those who play here don't really use money to gamble." "Really?" Xie Lian asked. The petite attendant covered her mouth. "Really? Sir, why don't you come with me?" She waved at Xie Lian and sashayed away. Xie Lian followed behind her without a word, but carefully observed all around. This gambler's den from the inside out was exceedingly extravagant and stylish, but not tacky. It was a building rich with taste. The petite attendant brought Xie Lian to the very back of the main hall, and there was a long table that was packed like sardines. Xie Lian only just approached and heard a man cry, "I bet my arm." There were too many onlookers. Xie Lian couldn't get through, and could only listen from outside the crowd. Suddenly another voice rang out, lazily responding, "No need. Never mind your arm. Even your shit life is worthless here." Hearing the voice, Xie Lian's heart jumped. He silently mouthed the name, San Lang. What he heard was indeed the voice of that young man. Yet, it was slightly deeper than he remembered. However, it was because of this that it sounded even more pleasing to the ears. Although he was surrounded by boisterous brujas, the voice still rang loud and clear through the noise of the gambler's den and into his ears. Xie Lian raised his head and found that behind the long table there was a screen curtain. And behind the curtain, he could see a faint red silhouette, laid back leisurely on a long chair. Translator's notes. Yin. Pinyin. Yin, from yin-yang. Yin represents the shadows and femininity. Mei-mei. Pinyin. Mei-mei, is a familiar address for little sister. Entrance verses are 3 lines of poetry that expresses the meaning, theme of the establishment, or just for good luck. 1 line on each side of the door, and 1 over the top. End